What the heck is up, you freaking tubes? What's going on? Nice to see you again. I see you over there. So, it is I, the guy who is speaking to you at this very moment, and it is you, right there where you are at. And you are here, right here where we are at. And we are here both together today to talk about one thing, and that is camera lenses. All right, so in this video, we are going to jump into the somewhat small but pretty complicated world of camera lenses, right? I'm going to teach you what all of the numbers and buttons and switches and bells and whistles and all the stuff, right? I'm going to teach you what all that stuff does, what it means. You're going to leave here and you are going to be smarter. I promise. Lenses! Lenses can be one of the most confusing things to learn when you're just getting into photography, right? So we're going to start off this journey by talking about the two categories of lenses, and that is zoom lenses and prime lenses. A zoom lens does exactly what it sounds like. It zooms. And a prime lens is a lens that is fixed to one single focal length. And stay tuned and you'll know what that word means. Focal length. Retention hacks. Anyway, prime lenses stay fixed to one focal length, and these lenses cannot zoom in and out, right? You're probably thinking, well, why the heck would I want one? You do want one. You'll know why later. Anyway, so those are your two categories, zoom lenses and prime lenses. In each of these two categories, we have a few different type of lenses. You have your wide angle lenses. You have your normal or mid-range lenses. Then you've got your telephoto lenses, right? And even beyond that, you've got another end of the spectrum in the super telephoto lenses. So those are your four basically types of lenses, right? You've got wide angle, normal or mid-range lenses, telephoto lenses, and super telephoto lenses. Okay, now let's jump into some concepts that you need to know. The first concept we're going to go over is focal length. Focal length is essentially the magnification of the image, and it is represented in millimeters, right? Millimeter? So an easy way to grasp this is to try and think of this idea of focal length in millimeters in relation to the human eye. The human eye essentially sees at 50 millimeters. So if you were to put a 50 millimeter lens on a full frame camera and put that camera up to one eye, right? Keep both eyes open, guess what? Looks almost completely normal, right? 50 millimeters is the focal length that the human eye sees at. So anything within 20 millimeters of that is what's known as your normal or mid-range lenses, right? So from 30 to about 70 millimeters, those are your normal mid-range lenses. Now, when you get below the 30 millimeter mark, right, you're making your way into what's known as the wide angle lenses, right? This one right here is a 14 to 24 millimeter lens. And wide angle lenses do exactly what they sound like. They give you a wide angle of view. So let's take a look at this right here, right? I'm gonna take this bad boy off. And they're gonna put us a wide angle on there. All right, so this right here is the classic wide angle, right? This is 14 millimeters, pretty wide, right? This is 24 millimeters, right? And the one I had on there a second ago, this is a 28 millimeter prime, right? So 14 millimeters, 24 millimeters. Now you can go all the way down into the low teens with wide angle lenses, right? But the lower you go in that focal length, the more distortion you are going to get in the sides and corners of your images because of this really bulbous and distorted lens element that's on the front of these lenses here, right? Now, the professional grade lens that I have on right now, like you can notice up here at the ceiling, the more money you pay, the less distortion you get. This thing is so wide, all right? So once you get down below that like 12 millimeter into the low teens and into the sub 10 millimeter category, you are going to get some serious distortion down there. And then those are going to be referred to as fisheye lenses, right? Because the image is so distorted, it doesn't even seem normal to the human brain, right? Things start getting rounded off and weird. But to those fish brains though, you know. If you know, you know. All right, now then, we talked about wide angles, talked about normal to mid-range. Now let's go in the other direction. So up in the 70 millimeters and above, this is when you start getting into the telephoto range, right? So this is a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And the telephoto range, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure anywhere in the, from 70 into the 300, 400 millimeters, that's your standard telephoto range. Once you get past that 300, 400 millimeter mark, into the like 500, 600 millimeters and beyond, that's when you're looking at the super telephoto range, right? So real quick recap, zoom lenses, prime lenses. Zoom lenses zoom, prime lenses don't. Inside of that, you got 4 types, right? You got wide angle, you got normal or mid-range, you have telephoto, and you have super telephoto, right? So good, good. And focal length, what does it mean? Pop quiz. Focal length is represented in millimeters, and it's to tell you the amount of magnification that the lens provides. And the higher the focal length, the higher the magnification. So to give you an example of this, all of the following images you're about to see were shot from a tripod to demonstrate the different focal lengths, right? You start at 14 millimeters, you have 24 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 50 millimeters, 70 millimeters, 100 millimeters, 200 millimeters, 300 millimeters, 400 millimeters, and 600 millimeters. The tripod never moved. The only thing that changed was the lens and the focal length that the image was taken at. So, focal length does something else besides just magnifying your image, right? It also alters the perspective of your image. Now, with a wide angle lens, you can make the environment and the background look very large and your subject look very small, right? And on the opposite end, with a telephoto, you can make the background look really small in comparison to your subject. You can make that look very large, right? So this is a concept known as background compression. As your focal length increases, your background becomes compressed, thus the term background compression. So the subject can actually stay the same exact size in your image while the background becomes compressed, thus altering your perspective. So the longer the telephoto lens, the more compressed the background becomes. And this, like every aspect of photography, is a factor that comes into play in your creative process. When you're taking portraits of people, for instance, you usually like longer focal lengths to have more background compression, right? This 85 millimeter is a very popular focal length for portraits because it really does a good job of compressing the background. Not too much, you can still get some in there at this focal length, and really highlighting the subject really, really well. And shameless plug, if you want to see a showdown between the king of kings of these 85 millimeters, go over and check out that video right up there. Right up there. It's like northwest of my right earlobe in that area. Right. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is when you compress the background becomes less distracting. So this is part of your creative process that you use however you feel like using it, right? Now I'll give you an example. You'll see a dramatic change in perspective from the following sequence of images, right? This first one taken at 14 millimeters, the second one at 50 millimeters, the third one at 135 millimeters, and the last one at 200 millimeters. right? Notice how the subject remains the same size in all of the images, but as the focal length increases, then the background becomes compressed and the subject stands out more. Weep, whip, woo. So now that you understand focal length, let's take a look at the lens itself and understand how to read what I like to call just the lens lingo. All right. So these are just the markings and letterings that help you identify all of the different kinds of lenses and what they do, right? On every single lens, you're going to see a large combination of different numbers and letters, right? So we all know that millimeter represents focal length, right? So on this one, we are working with a 10 to 18 millimeter zoom lens. Now, the numbers that usually will immediately follow the focal length are going to represent the aperture of the lens, right? An aperture is a whole nother concept that we already went into. So if you need to know what that is, you can go check it out in our exposure triangle video. And if you do need to stop and go watch that, it's okay. I'll be here when you get back. But on all lenses, the aperture shows up as a ratio of 1 to whatever the minimum aperture of the lens is, right? So in this case, we have an 85 millimeter, 1 over 1.2, right? And this is known as the F number or the F stop. Now, something to note as it pertains to the aperture on a zoom lens. On some zoom lenses, as the lens zooms out, the aperture gets smaller. So right there, that's your aperture. As we zoom that out, what happens is it shifts away from the sensor, right? So it gets smaller as it goes further away. And this is what's called a variable aperture lens, right? And that'll be represented as, like this one right here is a 28 to 300 millimeter f1 over 3.5 to 6.3. That means at its widest is a 3.5 f3.5 aperture, and at its smallest is f6.3 aperture, right? So just know that on some lenses, the aperture can actually change. But the higher quality lenses are going to have what's known as a fixed aperture, right? So this is a 14 to 24 millimeter f2.8, right? That means it does not change, right? It is a fixed 2.8 aperture. No matter as I zoom through it, the aperture does not change in size. Same on this 70 to 200 millimeter over here. As you zoom through the entire range, the aperture does not change. 2.8 at 70 and 2.8 at 200. It does not change as we go through the zoom range. This is a fixed aperture lens. Now, pretty much all the higher quality lenses, you're going to have fixed aperture zoom ranges. And one thing that is very important to remember is that the key to all of photography is light. So the more light that can come through your lens, the easier it is for your camera to get high quality images. It's all about the light. The more light that comes in, the better quality the light that comes in, the better the images that come out. That's just how it works. It's physics. Don't blame me. I'm sorry. Long story short, you want fixed aperture zooms for the best quality images, and you want large apertures for the best quality images. And these wide apertures also give you the best depth of field, right? All right. That blurriness that you get behind the thing, that's the depth of field. I'll talk about that concept later. But anyway, the wider the aperture, the better the depth of field, and the better the low light performance because it's letting in a lot more light. But this is just a medium-sized but. Well, it depends. But it does come at a price, and usually that is a 4-figure price. All right, now let's move on and let's talk about the numbering, right? Let's move up and look at the front of our lenses. So on the front of the lens, we usually have another number that is represented in millimeters, and it's preceded by a little circle with a line through it, right? That's 67 millimeters. That is referring to the filter size. This filter is a 67 millimeter filter, and that's how you know the size of filter to buy, right? And the filters will say that right there on the side of the filter as well. Anyways, let's talk about the rest of the stuff on the front of the lens, right? You're gonna have the manufacturer's name, the type of lens, zoom lens, right? You may see the word macro on there, which means that it is capable of macro photography, which is basically just close-up photography. This just means that your lens can focus at really short distances, right? So this lens, for instance, can focus at less than a foot, right? So less than a foot away, and it can get focus. And usually macro lens indicates that it's going to give you a 1-to-1 relationship of subject to sensor size, which isn't important. It just means that it can take good pictures of things close up, usually tiny things, right? Now, you may also find other combinations of letters and numbers and stuff, such as IS, that term stands for image stabilizer. There's a seemingly infinite combination of letters that you can find on lenses, right? And the image stabilizer will usually show up with a switch, right? And while we're talking about it, let's go ahead and get into switches.
Switches.
So a lot of times you are going to have a focus switch, so you can switch between autofocus, manual focus. You'll have a stabilizer switch a lot of times if you have image stabilization on the lens. You may have stabilizer mode switch. So this depends on the lens. A lot of times that will switch between different modes. Like one might be full stabilization, like horizontal, vertical, like all that stuff. And one may be like vertical only stabilization. So if you're, say you want to take panning shots, but a panning shot is where you would want to go left, right. You'd be moving your camera left, right a lot. And so you don't want it to stabilize left, right because you want the left, right movement for creative purposes in your images. So it would have a mode that would only stabilize up, down, not left, right, right? And like I said, that depends on the lens, but different lenses will have different stabilizer modes. Other switches you may have, you know, that one's called VC, same as image stabilizer, just is a different brand, so they call it something different, vibration control versus image stabilization. Another switch you may have is a switch that limits the focal distance of the lens, right? So this switch says that it can now focus from 0.31 meters to infinity, which is around a foot, to infinity. They're all going to go up to infinity. And then, or you can say no, 0.48 meters, right? There's tons of different reasons why they may have this stuff in there. A lot of times you'll find that on larger, like telephoto and super telephoto lenses. So like you'll have the full range, you'll have a 15 meter range right there. This particular lens can focus from 2.7 meters to infinity. So like this would be if you know that whatever it is that you're focusing on is not going to get closer than 15 meters, then you would put it on there, because think about it, 2.7 to 15 meters is a giant gap, right? That's a big gap that it has to search for a focus in. If you know that whatever it is that you're shooting is not going to be closer than 15 meters to you, eliminate that gap. And then guess what? Okay, now I know I only need to search from 15 meters and beyond. It helps your autofocus speeds whenever you tell your lens, okay, focus in this range. Another switch that you may run into is a lock switch. So a lot of times lenses can have what's called lens creep, right? If the lens actually zooms out, like it zooms out like that, what can happen is lens creep, right? I didn't do anything. The lens just crept. If I'm holding my camera down, I don't want the lens to creep out. Guess what? They build in a lock switch into a lot of these lenses, right? Where you can lock to where you won't get any lens creep when it's locked. You may have some other stuff, but those are all of the most important ones, I would say. Now, let's look at the rings on the lenses, right? So up near the front of your lens, this is what's called the focus ring. Back in the day when I started, all of the lenses were manual focus, right? This is how you focused your lens all of the time, right? Nowadays, all of them are pretty much autofocus, so you don't have to use that. It does it for you. And when you spin that, that's where these numbers come in, where you can see the actual distance of where you are focusing, right? It's going to show you in feet, and it's going to show you in meters, and as you change your focus, it shows you a representation of feet or meters as that focus ring changes. Now, as we move further back, you get to the zoom ring, and this does exactly what it sounds like. This is the ring that you zoom in and out through the focal range of the lens. Now, one last thing to know when it comes to switches and rings and everything is that on some of the older lenses or even some film lenses, you will have what's called an aperture ring, right? And this manually controls the size of the aperture. So as I turn this ring, you will see the aperture get smaller and larger, right? You will see it go down from f2.8 all the way down to f22, right? This is the aperture ring. It will usually always have corresponding numbers that line up and show you exactly where your aperture is at, right? And then even further back, you're going to find a dot somewhere on your lens. Sometimes this dot can be found on the inside of the mount ring, but you're going to find a dot somewhere on your lens. And likewise, you will find a dot on your camera. Line the dot of your camera up with the dot of the lens, and that's how you know how to connect your lens to your camera. When mounting a lens to your camera, do not ever try and force it, right? It should always slide easily into place with a click at the end to let you know that it's locked in place. Now, contrary to what I'm doing here, you want to always try to keep a lens cap on both the camera and the lens as much as possible when mounting and unmounting lenses. And this prevents particles from coming in and damaging your sensor and damaging the glass in the back of your lens. Now, when cleaning a lens, I would not recommend just going up and cleaning it with your shirt, right? I would say worst case scenario, maybe, perhaps, sometimes, if you're in a pinch, no, just don't do it, right? If I'm in a pinch, my worst case scenario is I might breathe on it, yes, but I will have a lens cloth with me always. In all of my camera bags, there are lens cloths, and I will use a lens cloth. But for optimal cleaning, one, don't do it very often, only do it when it's necessary. And two, I like to use what's called a lens pin. I will put a link to those in the description as well if you would like to buy one. They're pretty cheap and they are specifically made for cleaning lenses. Now, the reason you don't want to clean your lenses too often is because lenses are coated with little tiny nanoparticles that you cannot see, but they are there to help improve the image quality. So you don't want to run the risk of cleaning them too often and rubbing off some of that nanoparticle coating on your lenses. So try to only clean them when it's necessary. And a good thing to know when you're buying lenses is that different lenses are made for different cameras and brands and so on and so forth. And you could even buy a lens for a certain brand and it still not be for your camera, right? You could buy a Canon lens for your Canon camera and it still not work for your Canon camera because of the sensor size. This is why I have to break out and make a second video. And that is where I would say, go take a look at that video because that's its own thing with a lot of other information. I know it's all sounding complicated, but hopefully I'm making it a little easier for you. One other thing that you may find on some high-end sports lenses is up near the front of the lens. I don't have any of them out right now. The 300-2.8 that I have has this on there. You might have some buttons up here, right? And those buttons are there to disengage autofocus, right? So say I'm shooting a baseball game or whatever, and I'm focused on the pitcher, and I know somebody's running to first base. I can hold that button down so that my autofocus disengages and it doesn't try and focus on the guy that comes between my lens, right? It just stays. So outside of that, that is pretty much everything. We have looked over zoom lenses from top to bottom. Now let's move on to prime lenses. Prime lenses are lenses that have one specific focal length, right? So to zoom with these lenses, you must physically move your butt, right? You must move your human back and forth while simultaneously burning calories. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But prime lenses are amazing because they are pretty much always extremely sharp, and they usually have very wide apertures to let a lot of light in. And most of the time, prime lenses are smaller as well, right? So if we look at the 14 to 24 2.8 zoom lens, and we look at this 14 prime 2.8 lens, it's a pretty significant size difference. So what prime lenses lack in magnification, they make up for in aperture size, image quality and sharpness, and compactness, right? So these type of lenses do force you to be more creative, but due to a larger aperture, they give you a much better depth of field. So this lens right here that you're looking through, not the lens you're looking at, the lens you're looking through, is a 28mm f1.8. That's why you get this beautiful, creamy, blurry background back here, because it is a 1.8 aperture lens, right? This one that you're looking at is a 1.2. Lets significantly more light in and has significantly better bokeh. Now, bokeh is the term used for the background blur in your image, right? All of this back here is the bokeh. That is how it's supposed to be pronounced, people, right? You will hear it pronounced 1,000 different ways by every photographer on earth, but it's like okay, except with an eh at the end and a b up front. Bokeh, right? It's not bokeh or bokeh or bokeh. It is bokeh, right? I personally spent 60 years on a spiritual quest in the ancient Japanese Nikon mountains and found a wise old man that told me how that word came to be. Or I just Googled it and figured out how to pronounce it. That's probably what really happened. Or is it? All right, so prime lenses have one focal length, great low light performance, and beautiful bokeh. The bokeh is so good. It's so good. Beautiful bokeh. Now, I'm not really going to go into the construction or physics of the inner workings of these lenses because it is insanely complex, trust me. But the one thing that you may need to know is that the circular glass, right? These glass components that are inside the lens are what's known as elements, right? Every lens has multiple elements, and it just means that there are several different sized pieces of glass inside the lens, which are bending light in a lot of very particular ways to achieve the focal length of that lens. Cool. Got it? Neato. Anyway, lastly, just going to do another pitch for the lens buying guide, the one tip I will give you if you are buying lenses is just make sure you buy it for the right lens mount. And like I said earlier, that may still not be the right lens, right? I can buy EF mount lenses, but this lens right here will not work on this camera right here because this lens right here is for an EFS sensor size camera. This is an EF sensor size camera, right? It's complicated. We'll get into it in a separate video, but hopefully this video has helped you understand these little guys, the ones that you own, and you hopefully walked away from this learning something and knowing more about these beautiful little thing called camera lenses.
Oh, yeah?
Of all the times that we've been together, this has definitely been one of them. I hope you learned something, and I'm going to go sleep now because this is late at night and I have to work tomorrow. And that is all the things that I have to say to you. So I'm going to stop saying things. I love you. I hope you're doing well. Goodbye. Enjoy the video. Hopefully you can go press the corresponding buttons down below my nipple area here and find the subscription things. But if you don't have to, you don't want to, and you don't want to, you don't have to. It's okay. I love you anyway. I hope you're doing well. Opposite of hello to you. Farewell. Goodbye. Hope you are having a wonderful time in the earth right now. To all of you future humans out there, I hope the future is finding you well. Farewell. Goodbye.
Oh, well, it has literally been over a year since I shot and edited that video, and it has just been sitting on my computer until just now, whenever it made its way onto the interwebs. I'm sorry. I don't even live in the same place, but that is a good thing because I'm setting up a YouTube studio here at the new place. So hopefully, that means we'll start getting some more stuff online. But anywho, if you have any questions about any of the stuff in this video, lenses, all that stuff, comment down below and I won't read them. I don't read comments on YouTube. Not sorry. But there is a way where I will read them, and that is if you join our Discord. So in the Discord, there are specific forum threads for each video where you can leave comments and ask questions to people on the Discord. You can tag me and I will see those there and be happy to help if and when I'm able to. So yeah, join the Discord. It's free. And it's just a community of good humans trying to get gooder at stuff. So yeah, if you're a good human and you want to take gooder photos, I'll see you there. And yeah, that's about it. Sorry, this has sat for so long, but I will be glad to check that off my to-do list. So yeah, of all the times we've been together, this has definitely been one of them. Love you, bye.